I'm not going to waste your time, man. Most of our mental suffering comes from one thing. And that one thing is mindlessly following what your thoughts say. What most people don't realize is that your thoughts are not on your side. They literally have their own various agendas that are not always aligned with what is best for you. Therefore, the key to success in any aspect of your life and eliminating your mental suffering is mastering your thoughts. And after you finish this video, you will have a completely different view on life and you will know exactly how to start mastering your thoughts. So the first thing that you need to understand is that you are not your thoughts. Do me a quick favor and just close your eyes for me a second. Wait, mate, I said close your eyes. Now what I want you to do is just observe your thoughts. And what you should notice is this like endless conveyor belt of thoughts that just keep on flowing. And now what I want you to do is to try and stop that conveyor belt completely. Try to stop those thoughts. Try to think of nothing for 30 seconds. And what you're very quickly going to learn is that this pretty much seems impossible. And that's because if you aren't creating these thoughts and if you can't stop them, then how could they possibly be you? So what are you then? Well, pretty much you are the observer. You are the person standing at the end of the conveyor belt of thoughts, choosing which thoughts to give power to. And what's really interesting about this is that 99% of people have no idea about this. In fact, most people think that their thoughts are them. They stand right at the conveyor belt, giving power and attention to every single thought that flows by, which is extremely detrimental, and it leads to copious amounts of suffering. If they get a thought that tells them to be stressed, then they listen. If they get a thought that tells them to indulge in addiction, they listen. And if they get a thought that makes them feel like shit, they'll listen to that too. So my question to you is, how can you possibly get anywhere in life when this is how you operate? And to be honest, I can't speak too much because this is exactly how I used to live my life. I pretty much lived my life exactly like you'd imagine a robot to live, where I literally just blindly obeyed my thoughts, which put me in just a terrible state of mental well-being. And what I know now is that everybody should be standing as far away from the conveyor belt as possible, only giving power to the thoughts that serve them. You want to become the observer of your thoughts and to not be at their mercy, because when you do this, you can literally notice when a negative thought arises and you can make a conscious effort to starve it from having any attention, which will not give it any power. These are the kind of thoughts that literally rely on power and your attention to keep them alive. So when you remove those things, these thoughts have no choice but to just starve and completely die off, which is exactly what you want, right? You see, the human mind is just so incredibly complex that it's pretty much impossible to understand the reason for why each thought starts appearing. So instead, I'll give you a mental model to help you observe your thoughts through. So imagine that there are two different aspects of you. You have your higher self and you have your lower self. Your higher self wants you to pursue your absolute highest potential to the absolute best of your ability. Like it literally wants nothing but the best for you. And then your lower self just wants comfort and instant gratification, and it will relentlessly pursue that, like even if it destroys you. So as you can see, these two sides have completely different interests, and the war between your higher self and your lower self is constantly happening within you. You can almost see it as though your thoughts are the soldiers for each side that are used to fight for them. Every single one of your thoughts is a part of this war. The two sides fight by sending constant thoughts down this conveyor belt to try and sway you to act in the way that they want you to. It's a bit like when you see cartoons and you have like, you know, the scene of the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, where they try to persuade the character into, you know, acting in a certain way. You are the observer and you are the one that is really in control. You control your attention, and when you give attention to a thought, you basically empower the side that sent it. And when a side starts to become empowered, it has a completely easier time swaying you and making you become more like that side. When you listen to thoughts from your lower self, you pretty much become more like your lower self, where you choose comfort and instant gratification. So the direction of your life pretty much depends on this war. So that means that, of course, we want the higher self to win this war. And that means we want to try and do our best to completely destroy the lower self. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, you need to understand it fully. It sounds nice and easy at first because obviously you don't want to be like the lower self, but it's not that simple. If you're used to listening to the lower self and acting how it wants you to act, it probably will be quite difficult to change, because right now you are probably very easily manipulated by the lower self, because the thoughts that it sends you are very exciting. When it sends you thoughts about choosing comfort and instant gratification, it's very hard to say no to that. You know, it sounds very nice to go and sit down and watch Netflix instead of working on something productive, doesn't it? And the thing is, the lower self knows exactly who you are, so it will know exactly what to say to make you give in. So you have to start to understand what evil really lies behind that thought, because to the lower self it doesn't matter if you have no money or no partner or no friends, so long as you have a way of choosing comfort and seeking pleasure. The lower self works tirelessly to bring its paradise into fruition, and when you give a thought that's sent by the lower self any attention, you are empowering it. And you are letting it continue to work towards its paradise. I'm telling you, man, like, this happens 100% of the time, and there is nothing that you can do about it. You cannot give in to the lower self, or it will get stronger in its pursuit of your destruction. Now, this might just sound like a complete load of BS, or like I'm exaggerating, but it's actually very serious, man. To succeed in any part of life, change is necessary, and comfort is the complete mortal enemy of change. To succeed in any part of life, it takes patience and consistency, because nothing is instant. Instant pleasure is the complete opposite of that. And it doesn't matter what your definition of success is, because this still applies. The lower self is the complete inversion of what it takes to succeed, and you cannot afford to feed it ever again. So the first step to winning this war is understanding the seriousness of what I've just explained. The second step to destroying your lower self is to never give attention to a thought sent by it, which, trust me, is a lot easier said than done, but you do get better at it over time. You need to start by being able to identify which thoughts that you need to give attention to, and looking through the mental model of the lower and higher self, you should be able to easily distinguish if a thought has your best interest in mind. But you must still think very critically. Thoughts can deceive you, and they won't always plainly indicate their motive. You might think a thought of fear is your higher self trying to protect you, but it is really your lower self just trying to keep you comfortable. You might think a thought that's congratulating you on your progress is your higher self, but it is really just your lower self trying to slow you down and trying to reward you with pleasure. You know a thought is trying to trick you when it leads to an action that the lower self would want you to take. So always follow the chain of actions that the thought is trying to lead you down. So for example, when I used to consume a lot of porn back in the day, I would literally just get a thought that told me to open Reddit and browse a regular forum, and I knew that if I followed that thought I would get more and more thoughts, each of which inching me closer and closer to just ending up watching porn again and again. The lower self has literally all the time in the world, and it knows exactly what to say to make you do what it wants, and it can play the long game, sending you one thought which leads to another thought, and then another, leading you on a string right to where it wants to be. You will become better at understanding which thoughts to give attention to once you become better at being the observer and separating yourself from your thoughts. After you identify that a thought is trying to manipulate you, you have to firmly put yourself into the position of the observer. Completely withdraw your attention from the thought. No arguing, no correcting, no judging, just cut off all of your attention and bring it straight back to the present moment. And there are a number of ways that you can do this, but one of the best and one of the most common is manual breathing. The thought will always pass. Just stay focused on the present moment for as long as you need to. You might get other thoughts that try and correct or argue with the manipulative thought, but these could be another trap. Remember, you are the observer of your thoughts and never the thoughts themselves. I've faced thousands of thoughts like these before. People like to believe that these thoughts are more powerful than them, but they are are not. It is always 100% of the time your choice. I've relapsed on my past addictions many times before, and every single time it was because I folded and gave in to these manipulative thoughts that have been sent by the lower self. You are the one that's in control. You are the one that decides whether you end up being the lower self or the higher self. And the truth about conquering these thoughts is that you won't always win. Even though it is your choice, you will give in sometimes. The goal is just to win against these thoughts as much as you can. Even the most disciplined and successful person in the world succumbs to the lower self sometimes. But the key is that they win 9 out of 10 times, so that one loss doesn't affect them as much. Most people win 0 out of 10 times and just give in right away when their lower self tells them to. This is basically just a muscle that can be trained, similar to just working out in the gym. Like, you get better at this. Every time you successfully withdraw your attention and return back to the present moment, you get a little bit better. And that's why meditation is extremely good for this. Because when you meditate, you literally practice getting your power back. You get it back, and it's away from your thoughts. As you keep at this process of no longer letting the thoughts that are sent to you by the lower self affect you, you will get better at understanding your thought patterns. So always write down what you observe about yourself in a journal so that you never forget it. And remember, failure is never a bad thing, man. Every single failure just brings you one step closer to mastery. Get my free muscle building diet plan from the description below. Believe you can, and you're more than halfway there.